The Caliphate, a form of rule in Islam that lasted for almost 13 centuries, from the death of the Prophet Muhammad to the overthrow of the last Ottoman Caliph in 1924.
The Arabic term for caliph is Khalifah, which actually in essence simply means a successor or a deputy.
The ruler of the Islamic world would call himself Khalifat Rasulillah, the successor of God's messenger.
Through the centuries, the title of Caliph is a term that has been used and at times abused. In June 2014, a militant group calling itself the Islamic State and Iraq and the Levant, or ISIL, declared the establishment of a caliphate, a call rejected by most Muslims around the world. ISIL reached into the past to appropriate the title of caliph. The group claimed its leader, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, as a descendant of the Prophet Muhammad's own tribe, the Quraysh.
أنت ممكن تقول أنا عربي قرشي وأنا ممكن أقول عربي قرشي. لكن حتى لو قلت أنا عربي قرشي ولا يوجد لدي شعبية أو قبول بالعالم الإسلامي، ماذا يفيد هذا اللقب؟
This is the story of how the title of caliph began in the Prophet's tribe, and how, 9 centuries later, the title was used by people of a different race. How different dynasties rose and fell, ending with the decline of the Ottoman Caliphate. This is the story of the Caliph. Mecca, Saudi Arabia, the holiest city of Islam. It was here, in the spring of the year 571, that Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam, was born into a family belonging to a tribe called Quraysh.
قريش كانت قبيلة مقر لها الزعامة في الجزيرة العربية وخارج الجزيرة العربية. قريش كانت أهل التجارة والمعرفة في أحوال البلاد العربية. قريش كانت تعرف معظم الحكام بالأطراف.
61 years later, Muhammad died in Medina, the capital of the new Islamic State. And with his death came the problem of who should be his successor. One thing seemed clear: the new caliph had to come from the Prophet's tribe.
لم يكن يصلح لهذه الفترة من القيادات العربية إلا قيادة قرشية. لكن هل يصلح أن يبقى هذا الشرط في عموم الزمان الإسلامي؟ هذا يختلف فيه المؤرخون، وإن كانت القرشية مطلوبة في طول التاريخ الإسلامي.
For 300 years after the Prophet's death, the caliphate remained in his tribe. But by the mid-10th century, the Muslim world had fractured, divided now between 3 caliphs, all 3 descendants of Quraysh. In centuries to come, one by one, each of those three caliphates would crumble and fall. Cordoba, Spain. Capital of the Andalusian Umayyad Caliphate. A distant remnant of the Umayyad dynasty that ruled from Damascus in the 7th and 8th century. The death of the second caliph, Al-Hakam, ushered in half a century of chaos among members of his family. In 1031, the 9th and last Umayyad Caliph, Hisham, was forced to step down.
الأمر كان ضد مجرى التاريخ، ضد مسار التاريخ. كيف يعقل أنك منبوذ بقوسين داخل محيطك الإسلامي وتسعى إلى إقامة دولة بديلة في نقطة نائية من الأرض هي بلاد الأندلس؟ فأنت لا يمكنك أن تساهم في التأصيل دينيا لمصداقية خطابك حول الخلافة، وسياسيا لا يمكنك أن تجمع كلمة المسلمين كلهم في كل نقاط الأرض تحت راية واحدة هي راية الخلافة الأموية.
Across the Mediterranean, the Fatimids in Cairo also fell victim to bitter infighting. In 1021, the 6th Caliph, Al-Hakim, mysteriously disappeared in the Muqattam hills outside his capital. His death, almost certainly at the hands of his own family, would be the start of the Fatimids' long decline.
From the late 11th century onward, the Fatimid Caliph is increasingly losing control of affairs, and that the political and military elites are starting to take over the state de facto.
In Baghdad, the Abbasids were suffering a similar fate. By the middle of the 11th century, the Seljuks, a rising Turkic dynasty, had seized control of the caliphate.
السلاجقة حققوا انتصارات خاصة على الروم وكونوا إمبراطورية قوية، لكن الخلافة فيها لم يكن لها أي دور، وإنما كان شخصا برضه له السلطة الإسمية والشرعية.
The Seljuk rulers were the first to take the title Sultan, an Arabic word meaning authority. And in the trials to come, the defenders of Islam would be sultans of non-Arab birth. Clermont, France. The statue of Pope Urban II, pointing eastward. In November 1095, from this city, he launched a Christian campaign to recapture Jerusalem and the Holy Land from the Muslims. The Crusades.
Clermont was planned by the Pope to be an assembly where he reasserts his authority to declare war.
In 1096, the Crusaders set out on an arduous overland eastward journey. After 3 years of demanding travel and fierce battles, they finally reached their goal. In July 1099, the Christians captured Jerusalem.
There's a major massacre. Muslims died, Jews died, even some Eastern Christians who the Europeans didn't recognize as Christians died. And the chroniclers, from the Crusaders' perspective, present this as vengeance for the blasphemy that these Saracens had done to Jesus' holy city of Jerusalem.
4.5 centuries earlier, Jerusalem had surrendered to the second Caliph of Islam, Omar. But in 1099, as Muslims sought to confront the marauding Crusaders, Islam faced a burning question. Where was the Caliph?
The Abbasids at that point had no military force which they could have sent. The Fatimid Caliphate, they had lost their Syrian lands to local warlords. So when they saw the Crusaders coming in, they probably were quite happy to see that these usurpers were now facing a major problem with these clearly quite strong military contingents moving in from Europe.
Large areas of the Levant were occupied, divided by the Christians into 4 distinct fiefdoms. But after half a century of Crusader success, Muslims slowly began to fight back. But it was not the caliphs who led the fight. Damascus, Syria. In the middle of the 12th century, this city was the capital of the Zingids, a Turkic dynasty founded by Ahmed ad-Din, the governor of northern Levant. In 1144, he had secured the first Muslim victory against the Crusaders.
وأول إمارة تحررت هي إمارة الرها. شعر المسلمون بهذا الانتصار أن بإمكان الأمة الإسلامية أن تقاوم، فكأنه أعطى أمل بأننا بإمكاننا أن نحرر أرضنا.
In 1146, Nur ad-Din succeeded his father in the struggle against the Crusaders in the Levant. 2 decades later, he would be fighting them over another prize.
هنا الصليبيون تحرشوا بمصر. طلب الحاكم الفاطمي من نور الدين زنكي أن يساعده في مواجهة الصليبيين، فأرسل له أسد الدين شيركو، وتعني كلمة شيركو في اللغة الكردية الأسد.
After 5 years of battle, Shirko, Nur ad-Din's Kurdish general, succeeded both in defeating the Crusaders and seizing control of the Fatimid Caliphate. He was succeeded by his nephew, Salah ad-Din, the man known to the West as Saladin.
Salah ad-Din started his political career as the wazir of the Fatimids, so he had to acknowledge the supremacy of the Fatimid Caliph for 2 years.
But in 1171, Salah ad-Din switched his allegiance, bringing an end to 2.5 centuries of the Fatimid Caliphate and declaring Egypt's loyalty to the Abbasid Caliph in Baghdad.
Why Salah ad-Din did this is that most certainly Salah ad-Din had one problem, that he had no legitimacy. So the main selling point for Salah ad-Din throughout his career was the Abbasid Caliphate.
The Karak Castle, Jordan, one of the largest Crusader forts in the Levant. From this powerful position, the Crusaders began to harass Muslim trade caravans, threatening even Mecca itself.
Salah ad-Din unified the Syrian and Egyptian political landscape, and the only remaining non-Salah ad-Din or non-Ayyubid polities were the Crusader states. So it was natural for him to move against them.
In July 1187, here in northern Palestine, at a place known as the Horns of Hattin, Salah ad-Din's forces crushed the Crusaders. Four months later, Jerusalem surrendered. This time, not to an Arab caliph, but to a Kurdish sultan.
العبرة بالسلطان، مش عبرة بكلمة خليفة وغير خليفة. خليفة العباسي كان مهملا، كان ضعيفا، كان غير مكترث بشؤون المسلمين بشكل عام، لكن صلاح الدين أثبت وجوده، قام بواجبه، فأصبح هو الحاكم.
The defeat at Hattin was a turning point for the Crusaders. Driven back to a strip of Mediterranean coastline, they consolidated their position with massive castles at strategic points like Sidon in Lebanon. But just as this threat to the Islamic world was subsiding, a danger of even greater proportions was gathering strength. This time, in the east. An ancient school in Baghdad, built by the Abbasid Caliph Al-Mustansir. It was part of a desperate effort to recapture the golden age of the early Abbasid Caliphate. In 1242, Al-Mustasim succeeded his father as the 37th Caliph. But he would soon face a new danger: the approaching Mongol hordes.
The invasions by the Mongols overall was seen as a major turning point in Middle Eastern history. And when the Mongols came, there was a clear sense of the way of how things had been, they will not continue to be.
In January 1258, the Mongols reached Baghdad. Within 2 weeks, the Abbasid capital had been brought to its knees. The Caliph, Al-Mustasim, was executed. The great city reduced to ashes. A 500-year caliphate had come to an end.
It was a moment that was both a watershed, but also a confirmation of a situation which had actually existed for quite a long time. Some scholars have argued that it was of not any great significance because the real power of the Abbasids had faded away hundreds of years ago, and they were just sitting around in their Baghdad palace, and that their existence had very little meaning for the majority of Muslims.
Islam was now in peril. The only remaining hope was the new sultans of Egypt, the Mamluks. Brought as slaves from Central Asia to form an army for the Ayyubids. They had supplanted Salah ad-Din's dynasty. In September 1260, here at Ain Jalut in Palestine, the Mamluk army met the Mongols in battle. It was a decisive victory for the Muslims. The Mamluks had saved the Muslim world, and their tenuous legitimacy was about to be strengthened.
There was a member of the Abbasid family who managed to escape from the slaughter in Baghdad and make his way to Cairo, where the Mamluks of Egypt subsequently recognized his descendants as caliphs in Cairo and derived their legitimacy from this kind of shadow or puppet caliphate.
Bolstered by the Caliph's endorsement, in 1291, the Mamluks put an end to 2 centuries of Christian crusades. Acre, the last Crusader fortress on the Mediterranean, was captured. Meanwhile, in Anatolia, a new Muslim power was on the rise. A power which would carry the banner of Islam to the gates of Constantinople. In 629, during the life of the Prophet Muhammad, the first ever battle between Muslims and Byzantines took place here in Mu'tah, southern Jordan. The fight ended with the Muslims defeated and their withdrawal to Medina. But the setback would be temporary. The great prize of Constantinople still beckoned.
Zira İstanbul denildiğinde akla Peygamber Efendimiz ve onun meşhur fetih hadisi geliyor. لَتُفْتَحَنَّ الْقُسْطَنْتِنِيَّ وَلَنِيمَ الْاَمِيرِ اَمِيرُهَا وَلَنِيمَ الْجَيْشِ ذَٰلِكَ الْجَيْشِ. Bütün İslam hükümdarlarının temel gayesi İstanbul'u fetihti.
If you read Arab geographers of the 10th and 11th century, Constantinople is described as the apple, the ultimate prize that someday Muslims will win. And often the taking of Constantinople is presented in almost apocalyptic terms as something that will bring on the final victory of Islam.
That final victory would fall to the Ottomans, a Turkic Muslim tribe that had emigrated from Central Asia to settle in Anatolia.
Fatih Sultan Mehmet'e geldiği zaman artık bütün şartlar maddi manevi ve Fatih Sultan Mehmet de bütün idealini İstanbul üzerine kurdu. Ve ya İstanbul beni alır ya ben İstanbul'u alırım.
In April 1453, Mehmed's army laid siege to the great city. Seven weeks later, the Ottomans battled their way into Constantinople. And as the victorious Sultan entered the city through this gate, an 800-year-old prophecy had come to pass.
The symbolic importance was known to Muslims and also for European Christians. Suddenly, one of the major capitals of Christendom had become a Muslim.
But just as they tasted the fruits of victory, at the far end of the Mediterranean, 800 years of Muslim civilization was about to come crashing down. the Alhambra, a Muslim citadel and palace. One of Spain's most famous monuments. For more than 2.5 centuries, this palace in Granada was the seat of the Nasrids, the last Muslim dynasty in the Iberian Peninsula.
La Alhambra se hace ya cuando queda un pequeño reino nazarí que ocupa solo el sureste de la península, ya no tenía el poderío del Califato de Córdoba, pero sin embargo se consigue una arquitectura que con materiales pobres da unos resultados de una gran belleza.
In the early 8th century, Muslims conquered most of the Iberian Peninsula, the province they called Andalusia. But the conquering army was unable to drive home their success. The remnants of the former rulers, the Visigoths, took shelter in the mountains in the north.
هذه الغلطة غلطة عدم متابعة فلول القوط الغربيون في شمال إسبانيا. العرب لم يكونوا على دراية كاملة بتضاريس الغرب الإسلامي.
The mountains of northern Spain would become the cradle of new Christian kingdoms. Kingdoms that would start a holy war, La Reconquista, to reconquer the Iberian Peninsula and end what they saw as Muslim occupation.
كانت هناك صحوة وكان هناك دعم ديني ورمزي للجيوش التي كانت تقاتل في إسبانيا. وكذلك كان الأندلس يعني ينخرها نوع من الفساد، نوع من العنصرية، نوع من الصراعات حول الحكم، نوع من الصراعات الإثنية.
In 1031, after the fall of the Umayyad Caliphate of Cordoba, Andalusia broke up into several minor city-states, easy prey for the Christian kingdoms. Help was needed from across the Mediterranean. Marrakesh, Morocco. Founded in the 11th century as capital of the Moravids. This Berber dynasty and its successor, the Almohads, crossed the sea to Andalusia to confront the threat from the Spanish Christian kingdoms.
كان المؤرخون يذهبون إلى أن مصداقية أو شرعية الدولة تتحدد بمدى تجند المغاربة والدولة الموحدية في نجدة إخواننا المسلمين في بلاد الأندلس. والسلطان أو الحاكم الذي لا يتحمل مسؤوليته الجهادية في الدفاع عن إخواننا في بلاد الأندلس تصبح شرعيته موضع تساؤل.
For more than a century, the Reconquista was held at bay. Until the year 1212, when the Christian kingdoms of Castile, Navarre, Aragon and Portugal united against the Mohammedans. Here, east of Cordoba, a battle took place which immortalized the name of this small village, Las Navas de Tolosa. Al-Muwahhid forces were heavily defeated by the United Christian armies.
هذه الهزيمة لم تكن هزيمة كارثة بالنسبة للمسلمين في الأندلس، ولكنها كانت كذلك كارثة حتى بالنسبة للدولة المغربية. وعندما نتحدث اليوم كباحثين في التاريخ عن أسباب انهيار الدولة الموحدية، من الأسباب الرئيسية التي ندرجها في هذا الإطار هي هزيمة الأندلس أو هزيمة الموحدين في معركة العقاب بالأندلس.
Christian forces continued to press southwards, and by the late 13th century, the Muslim presence in Spain was reduced to the tiny Nasrid kingdom of Granada.
كانت غرناطة هي ملاذ كل الفارين من الأندلس من يهود ومسلمين. هذه المدينة يعني بقاؤها كان مرتبطا بمجموعة من المعاهدات ومجموعة من الاتفاقيات التي كانت موقعة بين الطرفين حول يعني ضمان يعني التبعية والولاء، والمسألة مرتبطة بأتوات وضرائب إلى غير ذلك، كأنهم يؤدون لهم مالا من أجل تجييش جيوش من أجل محاربتهم.
In 1491, the united armies of the two Christian monarchs, Queen Isabella of Castile and King Fernando of Aragon, laid siege to Granada. Muhammad XII, the Nasrid Sultan, sent a desperate request for help, but this time there was no answer. With no sign of help appearing, the city surrendered to the Spaniards. In January 1492, the Spanish entered Granada. La Reconquista was complete.
822 عاما من الإصرار. كانوا أفرادا، أصبحوا جماعات، أصبحوا دولا، أصبحوا إمارات، فكونوا جيوشا فعادت الأندلس إليهم. أما نحن كنا العكس، كنا دولا فأصبحنا أفرادا فضاعت الأندلس.
1492 marked the end of Muslim rule in Spain. That same year, Christopher Columbus arrived back in Granada. He brought news of his discoveries to his sponsor, Queen Isabella. A new world was about to open to the Christians. While the Muslims were about to start fighting each other over an old title, the Caliph. In 1453, Istanbul, no longer called Constantinople, was made capital of the Ottoman Empire. An empire that had already made inroads into Christian Europe. the Sultan, whose remains lay here in this mosque, had a different strategy. Selim I came to power in 1512. 5 years later, he had toppled the Mamluk dynasty in Egypt and tripled the size of the Ottoman Empire.
When the Ottomans conquer Egypt, they take over from the Mamluks. They can claim to be protectors of the holy Muslim sites, Mecca and Medina, and they, if you like, inherit the mantle of being caliphs from this shadow line of Abbasid caliphs in Cairo.
Sultan Selim işte orada diyor, halifeliği getirtiyor. Yani bildiğim kadarıyla İstanbul'a geliyor. Bazı rivayetlere göre bu halife devretti ve Kahire'ye geri döndü. Bir ikinci rivayette İstanbul'da idam edildiğine dair. 2 tane rivayet var. Bu 2 rivayetin hangisi doğru? Çünkü Osmanlı kaynaklarında bu konuda elimizde kayıt yok.
The Topkapi Palace, legendary residence of the mighty Ottoman sultans. In 1517, the sultans awarded themselves another honored title, Caliph. Almost 9 centuries after the foundation of the Caliphate in 632, the title had slipped from the hands of Arabs and the Quraysh, the Prophet's tribe.
The Ottomans don't seem to have made a huge amount of being caliphs. And whilst they did claim the title, it was more of an honorific or something that indicated that they were first among Muslim monarchs. So the Ottomans were not initially, in the 16th, 17th or 18th century, really claiming to be universal Muslim rulers.
Yet after a slow decline of 3 centuries, the successors of these great Ottoman sultans would turn once again to the Caliphate in a desperate attempt to rescue their falling empire. Yildiz Palace, Istanbul, the residence of Sultan Abdulhamid II, who came to the throne in 1876. He was a skilled carpenter and crafted most of his own furniture. As he chiseled and planed, the carpenter sultan was contemplating the gradual loss of territories. By the late 19th century, much of the mighty Ottoman Empire was disappearing from the map.
حاول السلطان عبد الحميد إحياء الخلافة ولقب الخلافة بأسلوب مختلف عن طريق طرح فكرة الجامعة الإسلامية. السلاطين العثمانيون متى لجأوا أو حاولوا أن يلجأوا إلى إعادة وإثارة فكرة إحياء الخلافة والخليفة عندما بدأت الدولة العثمانية تعاني، عندما بدأت تسقط منها كثير من البلاد.
السلطان عبد الحميد خدم الدولة العثمانية في أمور كثير. أكبر شيء سواه الخط الحديدي يلي بيطلع لغاية الحجاز، يعني للمدينة المنورة. كان بده كل الشعب العرب والإسلام يتماسكوا مع الخلافة.
But the Sultan's attempt to exploit the spiritual power of the title Caliph could not save him. In 1909, Abdul Hamid was deposed. Mehmed Rashad was installed as the 35th Sultan of the Ottoman state. And though his coronation was marked by lavish traditional festivals, in truth, he was powerless.
1909'dan itibaren Osmanlı Devleti değişti. Yani Osmanlı Devleti'ni artık padişahlar idare etmiyor, halife idare etmiyor. İttihat ve Terakki dediğimiz bir hükümet idare ediyor. Bir junta hükümeti idare ediyor.
In November 1914, the Ottomans entered World War I on the side of the Central Powers. A holy war in the name of the Caliph, a war that would prove disastrous for the Caliphate. On the other side of the trenches, Western powers saw an opportunity.
بريطانيا كانت محتلة كثير من مناطق العالم العربي. هلا كان بقي عندها ما يسمى المناطق الاستراتيجية اللي هي مناطق بلاد الشام والعراق. ولذلك كانت تنظر انه هذه فرصة يحقق مقام. وفعلا استفادت عن طريق انها دعمت العرب بان يقوموا بثورة ضد من؟ ضد السلطان العثماني.
And to encourage the Arabs to rise up in revolt, the British too would turn to the ancient power of the Caliphate in the person of Sharif Hussein, the custodian of Mecca.
لماذا الشريف حسين بن علي بصفته من الأشراف وأيضا يعود نسبه إلى قريش؟ جده الحسن بن علي بن أبي طالب، بن فاطمة الزهراء، منصبه أمير مكة، ولديه إلى حد كبير سمعة في العالم الإسلامي مقبولة.
In June 1916, what was called the Great Arab Revolt erupted in Hejaz, a desert region in the west of what is now Saudi Arabia. Under the command of Sharif Hussein's son, Faisal, and with the advice and help of a British officer, T.E. Lawrence, Arab forces advanced northwards, supported by the British, who attacked on two fronts. Within 2 years, in 1918, the joint forces had taken the whole of the Levant and Iraq. In October of that year, an armistice was concluded. The Ottomans had suffered a humiliating defeat. In July 1918, 4 months before the end of World War I, a new sultan was proclaimed, Mehmed Wahid ad-Din. He was to rule over what was left of the Ottoman Empire, virtually nothing, Anatolia and Istanbul. But even this would soon be lost. Just 2 days after the end of the war, French and British troops marched in to occupy the Ottoman capital. Anatolia was divided between the Western powers.
Ne demektir bu? Dünya üzerindeki tek ve son Müslüman devlet bağımsızlığını kaybetti demektir. Bir düşünün, 1918 yılında dünyada bana ikinci bir bağımsız Müslüman devlet gösterin. Yok.
Turkish nationalist resistance broke out. After 3 years of bloody fighting, the Turks succeeded in liberating Anatolia. Only Istanbul was left occupied, and in it, was a sultan now viewed by nationalist Turks as a traitor.
Nitekim Kurtuluş Savaşı'nın kazanılmasıyla birlikte ilk defa olarak halifeye karşı söylemler başladı. Seni istemiyoruz. Zira padişaha karşı padişah aynı zamanda sanki vatanın kurtulmasını istemeyen, sanki Kuvayi Milliye hareketine karşı gibi gösterilen.
In Ankara, on the 1st of November 1922, the Turkish National Assembly abolished the Sultanate. 2 weeks later, Mehmed Wahiduddin, Sultan and Caliph, left the Dolmabahce Palace, the residence of Ottoman rulers, through this gate, bound for exile. Abdülmecid II was chosen to hold the now largely symbolic title, Caliph.
Türkiye Cumhuriyeti bağımsızlığını ilan ettiği anda Avrupa devletleri tanıma noktasına kuyruğa girdiler. Sebep neydi? Demek ki orada yapılmış bir takım anlaşmalar vardı. Bunlardan biri de halifeliğin kaldırılmasıydı. İslam dünyası derbeder olmalıydı, başıboş olmalıydı, her kafadan bir ses çıkmalıydı ve rahat yönetilebilmeliydi.
On the 3rd of March 1924, the last vestiges of the Caliphate were dismantled by the new Turkish Republic. The title of the universal ruler of Islam, a title 13 centuries old, had been terminated by Muslims themselves. Abdülmecid, the last Ottoman Caliph, was sent into permanent exile.
وبالتالي ماتت فكرة الخلافة وعاشت الدول الإسلامية منذ الربع الأول من القرن العشرين حتى الآن بمفهوم الدولة القطرية، والناس نسوا فكرة الخلافة ومنصب الخليفة. لم يذكرهم به إلا الفترة الحالية البغدادي ولم يتعاطفوا معه كثيرا.
وإن إخوانكم المجاهدين.
Tarih boyunca hem İslam dünyasında ben halifeyim diyen, önemli olan o vazifeye haiz olup olmadığı, o vazifenin yükünü kaldırıp kaldıramadığı. Yani işte Suriye'de etrafına topladığı işte birkaç bin adamın başındaki biri kalkmış ben halifeyim demiş ya da bir başka yerden birisi. Bunlar bizi çok ilgilendirmiyor.
The Caliph is meant to be a universal figure who draws support from the Muslim community as a whole. That is obviously not the case with Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. The historical record also shows that when people can't gain broad-based consensus, their caliphate automatically becomes invalid.
The caliphate is such an extraordinary entity. As an outsider, I wish that the Islamic worldwide community had somebody who could represent them in all their excellence, not traditions of political violence or civil war, but about the other side of Islam, which I'm afraid the West doesn't really understand.